Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. And today's topic is the discounting strategy, which is super exciting, especially people who likes to utilize discounts. But if you are an e-commerce business owner, it can be tricky to please your audience and create these strategies around that. If you're joining for the first time, we meet every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and we bring one topic and a panel of experts for compelling insights around e-commerce. Okay, so we are going to start with everybody's intro. And Damon, would you like to start with your intro?
All right, thanks, Sam. Damon Pistolka with Exit Your Way. We help manufacturing and e-commerce companies build better businesses so they can sell or succeed in when they want.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Damon. I think you have a lot of experience in the physical space before getting into e-commerce and discounting strategies, and the psychology behind discounting strategy is going to be fairly similar. So it'll be interesting to dig into what are the similarities, what are the differences. Thank you so much for being here, Damon.
You bet, Sam.
Okay, Chris, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. Chris Harrington, President and COO of Gen Alpha Technologies. We've developed our Equip solution to help manufacturers and distributors sell their products online. So many years of actual manufacturing experience. Prior to joining a technology company, I was responsible for sales of equipment and parts. And now I'm in technology, responsible for helping other companies successfully sell their equipment and parts. So happy to be here with the panelists today.
Yeah, and it's going to be so interesting when I think of e-commerce. Obviously, I'm always thinking B2C. And when you go to any of the B2C sites, the first thing that you are going to see is going to be discount pop up. But I don't know how that is going to work in the B2B. So it's going to be super exciting. Thank you so much for being here, Chris.
Absolutely.
Eric, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, hi, Sam. My name is Eric Landman, coming to you from Bozeman, Montana. I'm a web developer, Magento certified solution specialist, and I'm with Earthling Interactive, the e-commerce division manager. Earthling is a company that designs, builds, and maintains e-com sites, CMS sites, and web apps for quite a variety of customers. And we specialize in open source solutions.
Okay, amazing. And Eric, I think the tech always plays a role in everything, irrespective of whether you are talking about driving the customer behavior, whether you are talking about the discounting strategies. So it's going to be super interesting to know, what are the nuances from the tech perspective. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Okay, so we are going to kick things off with the setting the stage overall. When we think of the discount, there is always a confusion behind what is really pricing and what is discounting. I don't know if a lot of people really understand the difference between pricing and discount, but there is a clear difference overall when we think of how discounting should be positioned and how pricing should be positioned. They both have different variables, the way they impact the final cost that is going to be for the customer. So I'm actually going to ask Damon. Damon, what is your experience overall with respect to pricing strategies? What are different drivers that affect pricing strategies? And what are different drivers that actually affect the discounting strategy?
Thanks, Sam. As I was thinking about this, in pricing, you really have to start with what kind of company and what kind of sales channels I have, because what Chris is working with, there could be a company that has distributors, could be direct to consumer or direct to the user, whatever it is. So you really have to understand what you're doing, because in certain times, you're going to want your pricing to be MSRP pricing on your own website, so that you allow your other platforms to work in conjunction with it, whether they be your distributors, whether it be a third-party platform. And then the other thing, and I think when you talk about pricing as an OEM, you really need to know if you've got a distributor network or authorized resellers that you have MAP pricing, minimum advertised pricing, because if you don't keep that and police that, you can degrade your pricing overall and ruin the strategy for everyone. So, when you're thinking about pricing, obviously you got to, put the right margin and all that kind of stuff that the accountants will help you do. But when you're thinking about the strategy, it's really is what kind of business do I have and how do I sell? Because you've got to make sure that they're not killing each other off, and they're working in harmony together with your pricing. So your pricing really has to give distributors or third-party e-commerce platforms or whatever, all an opportunity to equally win or drive the business where you want it to anyway.
Okay, amazing. Great insights there. And I absolutely agree with you that, this is really going to be based on the channels that you might have, and each channels are going to have different pricing. You need to make sure you are not going to run into channel conflicts, especially if you might have a lot of different channels. If you have e-commerce as well as distributors, you need to keep that in mind, that you are not selling cheap either on your e-commerce channel or with distributors. Otherwise, somebody is not going to be happy. So you definitely need to keep that in mind. The other instances that I have personally seen is going to be geography. I guess the geo-based pricing is going to be super important as well, because what price you might charge in California, it might not be fair to charge that in Ohio or Tennessee, just because the cost of living is far lower. So that could be another one. There are customer groups specific pricing as well that I have personally seen. So next, Chris, I'm actually going to move to you. Yeah. So Damon, you have a follow-up comment?
Yeah, and one of the things that I've seen that is really interesting is when you talk about use-based pricing.
Yeah.
Because say I make an air filter for an automobile. Well, that automobile on a Chevrolet, that air filter on a Chevrolet might be used in a Mercedes, it might be used in a Lexus, it might be used in a lot of other high-end cars.
Yeah.
And what I see, and especially in the automotive industry, is that same item is priced differently based on where it's going. You can do that. You see it in lighting. You see it. I mean, so if I buy a light bulb for a very expensive scientific piece of equipment, that light bulb is going to cost me more than if that same light bulb is used in a home setting or something like that. So use-based pricing, I think, is very important as well.
You are so right, and I'm actually going to build on that, because now, if you look at the pricing psychology overall from the large customer versus the small customer, I think the application is going to have similar scenarios here, that you don't want to charge too low for your larger customers because they can afford far more than your smaller customer. So this is the similar thing, that if you're putting the same device, and let's say in Chevy versus Mercedes consumers might be able to afford far more, even if it is going to be the same product. So that's definitely important. Mm-hmm. Chris, you had a comment. Do you want to share your thoughts? Obviously, the discussion is really around discounting, but we are really setting the stage in terms of differences between pricing and discounting.
Yeah, and I was only going to add that on the pricing side, what I have historically seen is loyalty pricing models. So I think, Damon, you were touching on it a bit there, but typically we would call that a loyalty pricing model, where there are discounts based on the loyalty level that either a distributor or a customer is giving to you. Back in my manufacturing days, we had a pricing tier model, and we rewarded customers across 4 different criteria. Yeah. So it was number of equipment they bought from us versus the competition. So it was percentage of that, percentage of the aftermarket we were getting them based on what we expected the market share to be, right? The amount of service support that they were giving to us. And then administratively, were they difficult to administrate doing business with them, or were they just really easy? Send in an email and we accomplished what we needed to do. So we took those 4 criteria, we had them weighted, and then that determined which tier they fell in the pricing model. So again, this is different than discounting, to the original point, but just wanted to establish those are the types of pricing models that we see out there.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you bring the loyalty piece to it, because loyalty obviously drive a lot of different pricing as well as discounting. And in fact, I mean, see, it's going to be interesting to discuss in which instances you are going to consider loyalty-based discounting as opposed to loyalty-based pricing. Now, both are going to have different behaviors and what you are trying to accomplish overall from the strategy as well as from the framework perspective. So it's going to be interesting to hear some of these stories. Maybe Damon, you have about the loyalty-based discounts versus loyalty-based pricing. Do you have any follow-up comments, Chris? Otherwise, I'm actually going to move to Eric. Eric, what is your perspective?
Well, we would start by talking to management about what their business rules and their business goals are.
Yeah.
Because that, of course, drives the tech solution. Our B2B customers, they seem to use a couple different models. One is just they have a list price or MSRP, and then they place customers in pricing groups, and the determination for the group that they're in seems to be come up with a couple different ways. Part of it is geographic. One of our customers has quite a large customer base in Texas, in the urban areas in Texas, and also in California, and also in the Northeast. Different product lines in those different areas, but they mark things up differently, from what I can tell, for California versus New England. You can't get away with charging in New England. They don't go for that. So that's one method. Another method is, and the way they do this, by the way, is that they take, usually it's a percentage of the MSRP discount for that particular price group, but they can actually finesse those rules a little bit. They can have pricing rules for specific product families. Like they might have a particular product family that's really popular, or more importantly, they're getting some really stiff competition from, and they're watching the pricing from their competitors, and they're going, well, okay, I know you're getting a 17% discount. We're going to tack on another 3 or 4% discount in addition to that, because of the competitive environment out there. So, it can get really quite complex for these pricing rules. That's primarily in the B2B area. The B2C area, I've noticed some interesting behavior in the outdoor products, outdoor goods area. I can buy some particular gear from a a retailer on their site, and let's just say it's $100. I can go on Amazon and find their store on Amazon, and it's like $92. And you just go, I know absolutely for sure it's the absolute identical exact thing. So they are clearly tuning the price depending upon the model or the audience, and they have a limited selection on Amazon. They don't have anywhere near the amount of stuff. So they're sort of sussing out the market, trying to figure out, well, this group of products is really popular. We can crank out a lot of them if we sell them on Amazon. So we're going to have a lower pricing model for Amazon. So that's some of the nuances that I see out there.
Okay, some amazing insights there overall, and I completely agree with the strategies that you mentioned, that there are going to be different layers with respect to your pricing as well as for your discounting, and from the customer group perspective, you are going to have the layer there as well, that for especially the comment that you made related to the geos, and I think that is aligned with what I was talking about, that what you are going to charge in California, you are not going to charge the same thing in Texas. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, they would get competition from, suppose the customer is in Texas.
Yeah.
My customers, the manufacturers in the Midwest, they ship things that are very heavy, like 1,000 pounds.
Yep.
Well, if you're going to throw something on a truck from the Midwest to Texas, well, that's a long ways to go. What if they're competing with somebody who happens to be in Southern California?
Yep.
The shipping from California to Texas could mean the difference in making or breaking the sale, just because it weighs so much and it's so far away.
Yeah.
So those are some of the regional considerations I think they're using as a calculus.
I completely agree. And yes, you are absolutely right that you have to look at the total cost, not just looking at the base cost. Because at the end of the day, what you need to make sure is that you are not killing your own margin just to give discount and setting the low ball price.
Yeah, they can't say, "Oh, we'll just tack on shipping," because customers are, "Oh, wait a minute,
No.
what is that going to cost? That's not cheap."
Exactly. I mean, that's how customers like to look. Okay, so we are actually going to design the framework for our listeners. And obviously, you guys mentioned many different aspects of the discounts, but we need to identify, okay, what are different discount types that can be considered in designing the framework, in coming up with the strategy. So one of the discounting strategies is going to be the volume based. I think that was mentioned somewhere, volume based, and it is going to be loyalty based, which is going to be similar, but they are not similar, because in case of volume, you are actually giving the discount based on how many products they are buying, as opposed to the repeat customers. So you have the loyalty base, you have the, I think you mentioned, Eric, the inventory specific. Let's say if you are trying to get rid of any specific product type, or if you are trying to promote any specific product. So I think there are going to be strategic discount. Then you are going to have the inventory specific discount. What else did we miss, Damon? Let's say if I ask you, in terms of coming up with the framework, what other discounts that you have seen?
Well, I've seen discounts that incentivize people to buy in certain quantities, right? So if you're a manufacturer and you want them to buy full cartons of something, you get a little better discount on a full carton than a broken carton, kind of thing. And that's common, and I've used it in a lot of different industries, even custom manufacturing, where if you can do something that's just say you're doing some sheet metal product and you're stamping, and you can, if they order a full coil of stamped products, that's better than ordering 1.5 coils of product or something like that. And that's where you can, on the big B2B stuff, you can do that. But really even on the consumer type stuff, just what, and we've got clients using it now. If you buy a full box, it's less cost than it is buying a broken box,
Yeah, so you are absolutely right, and there are definitely drivers, and I think the right term, especially in the tech world, is called unit of measure. Obviously, in the business as well, they use that. There are going to be a lot of different drivers related to unit of measure, and each of the unit of measure that you are going to have, whether you are selling the same product, maybe in, let's say, if you are selling liquid, in some cases you might be selling in boxes as well as in bottles, and they both may have different discounting framework. Depending upon which specific product type or maybe the packaging type you are trying to promote.
Yeah, and really now the other thing that's playing into it, as in a lot of the retail deliveries, the cost of shipping has gone up so much in the last year or year and a half, really, that being able to understand where your break points happen, even in a UPS kind of thing, where you go, if you look at the UPS scale for FedEx or whatever you're using, from 0 to 150 is usually the top end of it. There's points in there where you can maximize your economy of shipping. And then when you go over to that next pound, it's not like it jumps the normal whatever cents a pound, it jumps dollars and or size and those kind of things. And you really look at those things as well to further refine the way that you can discount to buy in those quantities.
Okay, amazing. Chris, what are your thoughts so far? What are your comments?
Yeah, I think the foundation that you built and then Damon's comments are really good. The one that I did think about that you didn't mention is seasonal discounting. Yep. So typically it is at the individual product level, which you captured, but seasonal discounts happen at a period of time. So certainly, we've talked to a snowplow manufacturer, and what's interesting for them is they discount their products to the dealers that carry their snowplow products much earlier than the season, because they first offer their pricing to get stock for winter. But then the discounting happens way before you and I would think that it would happen, because the winter season isn't over yet, but they're trying to get rid of their inventories of what they produced and stocked for their seasonal push. Now, as they were considering opening their e-commerce site up to the public, certainly the seasonal discounts would now be at a different time than they've historically discounted to dealers. So that is one example that I've seen kind of play out on the seasonal discounting side of things.
Yeah, and you are so right. I don't think you can talk about discounting without talking about seasons, because discounts are really known for seasons, to get rid of inventory, to meet your numbers. That's what discounts are for. So I have a follow-up question for you overall with respect to the algorithm of discounts. And you did mention that, if you have a lot of different dealers and distributors, what you have to do is you have to push these discounts early. So I don't know if a lot of e-commerce platform provide any sort of automated recommendation in terms of when they should be pushing the discount to take really advantage of the business opportunities. Have you seen anything similar in your experience in any specific platform, or requests coming from your clients that, you want to automate this process? You want to know how early you should be pushing the discount to your dealers to get the real advantage of, okay, how much inventory do I have? How much discount should I be pushing? If I push too much, then obviously I'm losing money because I don't have as many products, and I don't know why I'm giving that discount, because I don't have as many products to sell. So have you seen these dots connected in any of the platforms? And are there any algorithms that can help business owners do this in more of the automated fashion?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think I have not personally seen it, but I think we can go there, right? Technology is not the limitation. Really capturing the data, which I would argue any e-commerce solution or any digital self-service solution is going to help you do, along with what's already existing in your ERP. So you have data over time that you've collected where these dots can be connected. While we haven't personally been asked to solve for that, I think there are solutions available for that for sure, or could be available if you scope it properly according to the business's needs. Now, what I will say, though, with the companies that I've seen who have discounting strategies based on seasonality, they know their business so well that they're already planning for this. I mean, it's part of their strategy right at the start of their fiscal year. They are planning for these periods of time and their ramp up of revenue and their deliveries and everything. In fact, their whole make to order structure is defined around the planning of how much consumption they think is going to happen during the season. So, data will additionally help and validate the way that they strategize. And I'm sure they're using data elements to help them do that, but probably not in an automated fashion. At least I haven't seen that. So great topic there, Sam.
Interesting. And, this is going to be my follow-up question to Eric as well. Obviously you do a lot of work in the B2B enterprise space, and those customers are going to be slightly more sophisticated overall with their technology, just because they have a lot more to lose, with their discounting strategy, with their pricing strategy. So I know for a fact that, all of your inventory algorithms exist. To be able to plan your right inventory the way you should be planning based on your business conditions. And that's what really your MRP process is when it comes to your ERP world. I think there are some tools out there that can do your pricing recommendations as well. I have seen some of those, or I don't recall all of those, but I think in the Amazon channel, there are some pricing recommendation engines. And maybe Damon can talk about those. But I don't know if I have seen the similar recommendation engines in case of discounts. So what has been your experience? Have you seen something similar?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that there are programs which exist to be able to create and stage campaigns for product sales and launch them automatically. But in terms of getting a recommendation from a specific platform, I'm not aware of that. That's usually handled by marketing people. So I don't really know how that works. But if they have a need, we can put together a system that does it. I know that much.
Okay, amazing. So Damon, what's your experience? Have you seen anything similar in the Amazon ecosystem? I know that you work with a lot of different e-commerce players. Are there any strategies which can provide automated recommendation for your pricing, but more importantly, for this discussion Are there any tools that can provide automated recommendation for discounts?
The ones that I've seen in Amazon are not necessarily based on discounting on what we're talking about. It's more like where the competition is at and other things like that. But when you back away from it in the businesses we've helped, I mean, we've had some, just take an example for if you're selling outdoor furniture for your backyard outdoor furniture, we helped someone doing that a few years ago. And they also had Christmas products, and so you got all these different seasonal products, right? They had snow tire change for cars. So you have to look at these kind of products and really understand and categorize them. So I know that when it's, July, I have to start discounting, but it's not only seasonally, it's also geographically that we would do this. We would take and we would split the North America, basically Canada and the United States up, and we'd say, okay, Canada is going to start the discounts on this day, and then in a month later or whatever, we started in northern United States, and then we do the southern United States in another time frame because the seasons last a little longer.
Yep.
And then you also have inventory constraints in it too, because you say, okay, when we get to this point in inventory or stock level on an item or a given item, we look at the trend from the year before, and we say, okay, if we've sold this much between now and the absolute end of the season, because as Chris said, this is all planned out, the season before.
Yep.
You look at this stuff and you start to take the discounts off of certain products or categories as you want to. This kind of discounting, I'm going to tell you, is critical in retailers, because otherwise you're stuck with that product for another year. And the thing is weird about this in a situation when you look at overall like backyard products, you can have just say a furniture set that sells like gangbusters one year, and I want to buy more next year, and that thing will sell 25% of what it did the year before. And so you really need to understand an inventory control is one of your measures of really a good business in the retail space.
That's actually a very interesting comment, because I did not think about these seasons being different in different geographic location.
Yeah. Oh, it's way different, especially on the front end of it too, because you start marketing to people in Texas and southern Texas and Florida very early in the season, because they're starting to think about outdoor in February and March for sure. Well, in March, there's still 2 feet of snow in northern U.S. and especially in Canada. So they're not thinking about that until May.
Yeah.
And again, their season in the north stops a lot sooner. So it has to be a different intensity of marketing, but that discounting follows those kind of patterns. And, that's you do that based, as Eric said, the marketing people understand how to do that based on geography and how we release those things.
Yeah. And by the way, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
I was going to jump in there, but there'd be other things they'd be selling to Canada, like swimsuits, because they're going to the Bahamas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
And by the way, on that note, I guess, one of the other points that we need to consider is going to be public holidays, which are, the trigger for discounting, because that's when people shop. So, your public holidays are going to be different in different countries. So, your seasons are going to be a factor, but these holidays are going to be a factor as well that you need to accommodate that. So, Damon, I actually have a follow-up question on that. So let's say if you are doing more of the centralized inventory planning, okay? And centralized would mean that in the US, you have the warehouse and you are shipping everywhere from the US. And maybe some of these smaller businesses, they might not even have the inventory allocated for the specific seasons, for a specific geography, for the specific customer, and you are just doing something and something is working. And obviously there are going to be tons and tons of problems because of that, because you just don't know what is going in your business. So in the centralized strategy, have you seen any problems based on the customers that you are working with in deciding the discounting strategy and that impacting the overall inventory planning?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just about every one, they have too much inventory. It happens inevitably because, as you move into that end of the season, there's a fine line between when discounting will actually help and it won't. If you miss that window, you're stuck with the inventory. and you sell a little bit in the off season, but you sell 5% of what you normally sell in a good month. So yeah, and that's usually how you see it, is your inventory over the years. Your business is growing, but your inventory as a percentage of your business should be going down rather than going up. And when it starts to go up, you can tell that you're having a problem with getting that inventory out like you need to.
Yeah, very interesting. And Chris, now I'm actually going to move to you, and I'm going to have very specific question related to OEM market, because OEM market is very nuanced overall the way it works, right? The cycle for the inventory for your machines is going to be very different from your parts, because they have a very different life cycle overall. So the discounting strategy that you are going to have for parts is going to be very different from your machines. So in your experience, what are some of the strategies that you have seen so that these two are in sync? What you don't want to do is you don't want to have too many parts or too many machines, because then you'll be struggling, I guess, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tie into one that Damon just talked about, and that's excessive inventory. So that happens in the retail space, and of course happens in manufacturing B2B as well. So, what I find is that many B2B manufacturers predict what they need in inventory based on what's sold in the past, right? So they're always looking at inventory and sales in the past and the different turns and so on and so forth. What they're not always looking at is the number of equipment operating, the year of those equipment, and which components are going to need to be need for the year and life of those particular equipment. And also, they don't often capture what people are quoting or searching for. I'll use the searching for term when we get into e-commerce, and not buying. So all their inventory prediction is based on what's sold last year or the last 3 years, however they're modeling that. And now they put this inventory, and at the end they have some surplus of some things, and maybe they lost out on sales of other things, because in our world, inventory does sell, right? So having product availability really helps move that product off the shelf. So that would be one, excessive inventory. Obsolete inventory. So things that have become obsolete, we will find discounting for obsolete inventory. So if they know that they're going to make a product obsolete and it's going to be replaced by something, they might do some specific target discounting to companies they know that can use that obsolete part before it fully comes obsolete, or they scrap it. Okay, so obsolete would be one. And then aged inventory. So sometimes people, bucket aged inventory with obsolete inventory, but aged inventory just means it's been sitting on the shelf for a long time. It still could be an active component, but it hasn't been able to move. And sometimes to get it off the shelf, and these can sometimes be, very pricey items, which mean they're carrying a large inventory value. They haven't been able to get it to turn. And maybe it's because the equipment that it operates on, there are fewer in the marketplace than, say, another model of equipment. So this thing, and maybe it's an emergency component. The OEM put it on the shelf to make sure they could satisfy a need when it comes up, but it's just sat there for so many years. And again, they don't want to have to scrap it. So aged inventory is another discounting strategy. Those three, I would say, are really common that I see in the B2B space. Now, I will tell you, with manufacturers that turn on an e-commerce system, where we find new strategies are coming into play are when they can observe that customers aren't searching for specific products that are available. And I'll give you an example. We work with a mold company. They sell mold components, mold bases, and other things. They also sell industrial supplies for people that use these mold components. Well, often they're not thought of for the industrial supplies. So in order for a customer to recognize them or even consider buying some of those industrial supplies, they might do some discounting to make them aware of those products. Okay, so that's one. And then it's anything that really companies are searching for and not buying. and the inventory levels have been there. So that means there's an interest in the product. There's inventory on the shelf, so you're showing stock, but they're not buying, which probably means your price isn't right.
Yeah.
So now they have to figure out the right price, and in order to figure out the right price, they might try some discounting strategies to see when that product actually moves, and that might help them with setting the next price. So those are some examples of some of the things that we're seeing, Sam.
Yeah, and those are some very interesting examples. And I knew that you are going to have a lot there because this is very unique, in my opinion, especially when you talk about using discounting just to do your market research, to understand how you are going to be setting the pricing, to generate the awareness. And I'm probably going to have follow-up question for you guys, Damon, if you have seen discounting being used just to generate the awareness, which could be a great tool. I don't know, if anybody would like to lose money just to raise the awareness, but you got to do something. So discounting could be a great tool just to generate the awareness. But the follow-up question that I'm going to have for you, Chris, about your earlier comment, and that is going to be the classification of these inventory, which is going to be your obsolete inventory and aged inventory. So when you look at this from the tool perspective, or the e-commerce platform perspective, I don't know if any of these SKUs are going to be classified as, let's say, the obsolete or aged. And I don't know if that is used as a trigger to identify the discounting strategy, because discounting needs to have some sort of variable. They can have the pricing at the SKU level. They can have the pricing at the product category level. They could also have, I don't know, maybe a pricing class level. So how do they handle, let's say, the obsolete inventory, aged inventory, and how is it being executed in the real world when you think about the e-commerce platform or the e-commerce strategy?
Sure. So the obsolete inventory, I'll start with that one. Obsolete inventory, before they make it obsolete, because once it's obsolete, it will have an automated message that has a product replacement. So now that obsolete one's no longer available and they're taking you to another product. So the way they're handling the discount is targeting to the companies they know where that obsolete product fits. That can be email marketing, the discount. It could be based on personalization. So when a customer logs in, they're going to see some promotion for that particular item that is going obsolete. Okay, so that's the way obsolete is being handled. On the aged inventory side, typically we see these as a featured promotion. So what it is it might even be simply called the aged inventory. In our world of manufacturing, customers know what aged inventory means, and usually there is a push by manufacturers to get rid of their aged inventory, and that's at that point it's pretty highly discounted, right? It's been discounted multiple times, and now so it will have its own promotion, which means it has its own page. So the promotion is running on a landing page where people would come in, they would click on that aged inventory tab, and in that page would be the list of all the aged inventory and the original either list price or their price and the new discounted price. So that's how that would be handled.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And it almost sounds like a clearance page that we typically see in the retail world when we are, let's say, buying for apparel or accessories.
Sure.
We are going to have that. I don't know if this is going to be a similar page on the OEM sites as well. Do they have similar page, or how are they displaying it to their customers?
Yeah, I mean, within our product Equip, that's the way you would do it. You would create a page, but it's really just called a promotion. And within the promotion, you're assigning products. And then when they click that promotion, it opens a page with those products in it. And then in your ERP system is typically where you're setting that discounted price, and it's flowing through to the e-commerce site in real time as people are looking at that page. And they in that promotion, their language will tell you that it's discounted, right? So that they know it's something much less than they would normally purchase it for.
Right. And I don't know if they are really mentioning this to the customers as well, that, this is going to be aged or obsolete. And that's why I'm actually giving you this discount. They are simply going to communicate that, hey, you got 45% discount on this specific product. If they mention that, what, this is aged or obsolete, I don't know if customers are really going to buy that.
Yeah. I come from a mining background, large equipment. This equipment sometimes has been running 30 years. It's well past its life. There's some aged inventory that this equipment owner knows if I don't buy it, somebody else might buy it, and they're not going to produce it anymore. So if I'm going to need that product from the manufacturer, I'm probably going to have a longer lead time, and it's going to be a struggle, and my equipment could be sitting. So oftentimes they will eat up that aged inventory just in case they need it for that old unit that they're continuing to run, down in the mine. That's just one example, but it's happening all over the equipment world, where you just have these used equipment that change hands multiple times. So somebody's operating, you see it in farmers' fields all the time. They're operating these old pieces of equipment, and they would love to grab some aged inventory on sale and stick it in their boneyard so that if and when they ever need it, it's there.
Okay, amazing. So, Eric, I'm actually going to move to you. I'm pretty sure you have tons and tons of stories there related to this discussion so far. I'm pretty sure you have seen similar scenarios as well in handling the aged or obsolete inventory. And by the way, I want to remind you that, on your LinkedIn post, I saw some very interesting tag flavors that you mentioned related to discounts. So you might want to bring those right now, because there is a tech perspective as well overall in terms of how you are going to handle discounts. So do you want to talk about those?
Try to remember what I wrote. Let's see. I've got a couple of good examples. We have a customer who is a manufacturer of aftermarket bike parts, seats and fenders and lights especially. And the way they control their inventory is that they have a attribute called model year.
Okay.
So if they haven't, and it's a cyclical thing, the whole outdoor industry is a cyclical thing. So typically the orders are placed in October from the retailers and the wholesalers. Then it goes into a manufacturing cycle, and the goods are delivered in spring or summer in normal years, not lately. But they may have let's just say a bike headlight. And these things, actually, they change them quite a lot. They're year to year, there's design changes and lumen changes, and they make it look flashy and cool. And bike people are geeks. They love buying shiny widgets. So they like the latest, greatest thing. But so they make a lot of these, and they have leftover inventory, and they tag it with the model years, so that when the next model year flips around, a tag comes up on the site, and it might say 2021 model year, or on sale. The sale flag would trigger that, and they would identify it as the model year. But then they might also say in the description, color change. The new product has a color change. So they're kind of triggering, it's sort of a cue to the customer that, it's kind of pretty much the same thing. We just tweaked it a little bit. And if they discount that product by 20 or 30%, a savvy customer will go, well, it's basically the same thing. Why wouldn't I just buy last year's? It's just been sitting on a shelf somewhere, or in a bin in a warehouse. It's just as good as new. So that's one strategy we see. And the other way is you can do model year searches, and another way is this. I have mentioned this customer of ours before that is a retail seller of sailboards and wind sails and windsurfing equipment and stuff like that. They absolutely tag what model year it is, and you can see, going right to their site, they can see, oh, this is a 2019 model. They've got some things that are old. And I just look at that going, that's pretty old. But it's a styrofoam surfboard. It's not like it's going to go old, right? Or be bad. So that's another way that they trigger visually with their retail customers that it's essentially the same thing. They usually place these in a product line page, like if it's a Tahe surfboard or something like that. The buyer knows they want that brand. So they go to this landing page and they see this stuff on sale and they go, wow, I could save $500 if I buy this one that's a year old. That's a pretty winning strategy because that inventory doesn't sit around very long. They move it.
Yeah, so some very interesting comments there, and I am actually going to touch this from the tech perspective because there is going to be a platform aspect overall, the way any of the e-commerce platforms are actually going to handle these things, and sometimes there are nuances because of that. So you mentioned two things, and I am going to pick the first one first, and that is the color change. So I know that in the retail world, when I'm buying the, let's say, black jacket, okay, I'm always paying more than the green one because nobody wants a green one. They might have produced, but black one, I mean, you are always paying $10 more. Now, there are going to be several different variations of the product, and the more complex your product is, the more variation you are going to have of the same product. Now, if you are actually talking about, let's say, the retail world, and if you have to capture all of these variations in your systems, and if you are creating, let's say, the individual SKUs or individual product, you are going to run into tons and tons of issues. And that's why platforms such as, I don't know, how many different platforms really support the B2B scenarios. For example, let's say if you talk about the matrix inventory, what matrix inventory is going to do is, hey, you know what? This is your template for the product. This is your product, and these are 3 different attributes. And based on 3 different attributes, the total combinations of the product might be, let's say, 100 or 99. But these are essentially the same products. You just have different pricing for those. You just have maybe a couple of variables for those. So now there are a lot of different e-commerce or ERP systems in the market. They are not really designed for the retail scenarios, but they'll claim that, you know what, I can do all. And then what you have to do is you have to create the 100 different products. And Damon, now as the finance or operations person, you can imagine how much work is going to be required in creating and maintaining those products, and how much slippage you are going to have across these product categories. Because let's say if you have to change one thing on one product, then you have to change across 100 things. It's just a nightmare, to be honest, if you are not using the right platform for the right product. So I really found that comment very insightful. The other comment I'm going to make is going to be related to the geeks comment that you mentioned. And the way I like to think of geeks is going to be in terms of the influencers. Okay, and influencers are going to be very common in the retail setting as well as in the B2B settings. You have to create the discounting strategies for influencers, because once they actually buy the product, then everybody else is probably going to buy, especially if they are going to have large number of followers. So one of the strategies that I have personally seen in this specific space is going to be create the strategy around your employee. And when we look at the e-commerce implementation or the ERP implementation, if that same person is going to be your customer, it's going to be your vendor, it's also going to be your employee, then, oh my goodness. I mean, see, there is a lot of complexity overall in terms of the way you are going to be designing those records and the way you are going to be handling. So I don't know, Eric, if you have any follow-up comments based on what I mentioned so far, but there are a lot of nuances there.
That's a lot of stuff. First of all, understand that there aren't not a lot of systems that support matrix pricing.
Yep.
That is a pretty advanced feature.
Yep.
So you have to really suss out the requirements there and make sure you want to do that. But I want to say you could attack that from a different direction, which is hopefully these sellers have some sort of ERP system that's capable and they can apply price discounts or matrix pricing on the ERP end, and then pull it through the application programming interface in a pricing synchronization routine and update the website. That would be the right way to do it. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't quite there because it is incredibly complex. So you're stuck with Sally in accounting having a spreadsheet with like 85 columns, and she's freaking out because, oh my God, it's a hell of a task. And you don't want to screw it up, right? Because if you screw it up, then you're really charging way too much, or you're losing a lot of money. So an integration is the way to handle that. So that, let's see, that matrix pricing was one of them. What was the other major point?
The influencer one. The
influencer
based, yeah.
Oh, this is huge in the outdoor industry. There are, especially with places like Facebook or Instagram, there are absolutely professional athletes, sponsored athletes that have blogs, and there are gear review sites. There's a lot of gear review sites. Things like Climbing Magazine has gear reviews, and they have influencers or professional athletes who review things, and they put website links in there, and they are driving traffic. Absolutely. You can look at stuff like Adam Ondra from the Czech Republic, or Alex Honnold is a sponsored athlete. He did the Dawn Wall, or Conrad Anker, who's with the North Face. If one of these people, and if you're in this little world, and one of these people talks about something, or they see a picture of them wearing a particular helmet or an ice axe or something, they're going to go look it up. And then they're going to see, oh, I like that Mammoth helmet. And they're going to start searching for a Mammoth helmet that Conrad Anker recommended. He's more North Face. But anyway, that's the nuance. So yes, there would be discounts based upon and whole strategies, marketing strategies that tie into the discount strategies for that particular product family, because they're pushing it and they're putting a lot of energy into making this stuff sell.
Yeah, so I would love to touch, deeper into these points, and I'm actually going to ask Damon for his thoughts overall. I think there are a lot of different points that we have discussed so far, and I'm pretty sure he's going to have a lot of stories. But Eric, before we do that, I think I'm going to have one clarification for you. A lot of people might not be familiar with the overall concept of the matrix inventory, which industries it is really going to be applicable. And I think there is going to be a discounting strategy that is going to be around the matrix inventory. And if your systems don't support that, I think your overall discounting is going to struggle. I know that you can probably have the workaround that you can treat your e-commerce platform as not knowing anything about matrix and simply keeping this information in your ERP. But a lot of things such as your loyalty information is going to reside in your e-commerce that is not even known to your ERP. So I think there is going to be a lot of problems overall in syncing this data and creating the discounting strategy simply based on just one system. In my opinion, I think that should be back and forth.
Yeah, I think so too. This is a really complex topic, so we can't address it properly in the next 5 minutes. But the matrix inventory would be, conceptually, let's just say you're wanting to buy a pair of running shoes. Well, you go to your running store, and there's, one in town here, they must have 70 or 80 different brands of running shoes. They got a whole wall full of running shoes. They have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pairs of running shoes in the back warehouse. So you take one model or one brand like La Sportiva, you take one model of that brand, and then they have a run of shoes. It's called a size run. In that size run, they have a distribution of how many people, it's like basically a bell curve of how many sizes. They're not going to have many size 4s or many size 13s. That's my size, unfortunately. They're going to have a whole lot of size 8, 9s, and 10s because that's where the majority of people are. So they would tailor their purchasing and their discounts to what is left in the inventory toward the end of the season. So they're going to see that bell curve get completely destroyed over the summer as they start to sell things, and they may have. Frequently you probably go to e-commerce sites and you see, oh, there's all kinds of extra smalls or extra larges because there's hardly anybody buys them, right?
Yep.
But you can find absolutely nothing in the middle ranges because that's what people buy. So this is the discounting strategy has to take that into account.
Yeah, and you are absolutely right. I think you are touching on a very important point because I think the size is very critical, especially in the retail industry. Because if you look at the discount, everybody, when I go to a store, there is going to be a popular size that is going to be, in my case, it is either going to be medium or small that I am looking for. And if I go to slightly more fashion-centric shops, small and mediums are going to be the first one they run out. Okay, they are going to have tons and tons of XXL. And if I go to slightly more classic brands, then all your XSL are actually going to run out, and they are going to have tons and tons of a small and medium. So your discounting strategy is going to be around a specific size. And if your e-commerce system does not know what that matrix inventory is, then I think you will run into challenges accommodating these scenarios. That would be my perspective.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Damon, I think we discussed a lot of different concepts here. Oh my goodness. I mean, like the discounting based on awareness, matrix inventory. Oh my goodness, influencer based discounting. So, what are your thoughts so far? What have you seen in your experience?
Well, the influencer marketing is something that, like in the outdoor industry, it's all over the place. I mean, I've seen it in the RV industry and a lot of other places too. But it is interesting because you can actually help yourself a lot by being able to give unique discount codes to a specific influencer, because you can actually then determine from that how much benefit you're getting and measure your ROI basically for them doing that. Because some of the people like Eric mentioned, they make a living off this, and some very good livings off of this. So that's the first thing with the influencer marketing, is making sure, I think in the discounting that you do, it's appropriate to the influencer and the kind of return they're going to drive. The matrix pricing, if you're selling something like Eric was talking about, shoes. I mean, just think of a run of Nike shoes. There's a model that has different color combinations. Get on their website and look at the different color combinations within a model, and then add sizes to that. I mean, if you're selling something like that, or clothing or anything we used to use it even on something as simple as an awning on a backyard awning, a powered awning, or a window awning or something like that, because it's different lengths. You have to have that in different colors, and you look at that, and I've seen it work both ways, with and without. When you don't have that matrix piece, it is a bear to work with, especially because everything, as you said, your SKU count goes up exponentially. Yep. Almost as you do it. I've added another item, but then when you consider all the color and combinations, yep, or something like that, or color and size, your SKUs explode. And then pretty soon your system's not running like you want, just because of the data constraints in it. So, those are, but as Eric said, the matrix is a bit more complex, and it's not without its problems. But if you're in that kind of product, if you're selling those kind of products, it's well worth it to use them.
So we are probably going to have another episode just on matrix inventory, because Eric needs to talk a lot in that, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have that. And Chris, I'll come back to you. But I mean, one of the critical points that we forgot to cover in this episode overall, in difference between your pricing and discount, is the point that you just mentioned, Damon. Okay, that is the discount code. Okay, in case of discount, you have code that is going to be slightly more public. I don't think the pricing codes are really published publicly. So, and discounts are actually used to track whether your discounts are really working or not working. In case of pricing, I don't know how much traceability is there with respect to pricing. It's slightly more passive, but your discounts are slightly more dynamic. So thank you so much for bringing that point. Chris, you had some comment.
Yeah, I'll just touch on what you just mentioned. We cover that in B2B world with coupon codes, yep, right? So the coupon code that gets set up in admin then applies to products, or applies to different customers, or applies to a product group or multiple product groups. So coupon codes is a way to think about that. I just wanted to tie in B2B to what everybody's talking about with the matrix, because hardware is a great example. Yep. Hardware, bolts, screws, nuts, the combinations, the matrices, and B2B providers have to sell this stuff too. And typically in their world, because they do have an ERP system, and they're solving for much of it using the ERP, and the e-commerce site is just pulling it in. But how you display those products might be different than how you display other products. I know in our world, we use a tabular view. So a single image might represent hundreds of products, but the attributes help you define and narrow down the exact product that you're looking for. So certainly it does come into play in B2B as well. And one attribute specifically in my world might be which product does that particular hardware fall into, right? So if I own a Z180, but the Z290 has this particular, I'm looking for the Z180 hardware that fits for me. So that has to be one attribute, so I validate that I'm getting the right thing. So Matrix is definitely in B2B as well.
And you mentioned one of the key points, that not a lot of manufacturers consider. I have seen that in some other industries. For example, if you go to banking or insurance, because they don't necessarily have their own products, okay? The only thing that they have is really the transactions and the technology. So they have to think about cost of transaction. Now, to your point, when you are talking about hardware and you are talking about nuts and bolts, and they could be pennies and nickel, but the cost of processing transaction could be $10. Okay, so you definitely don't want to do that when you have such a small sized inventory, I guess. Okay, so we are about time right now. So what we are going to do is just one word or one sentence closing advice. Eric, do you want to start with your closing advice?
Sure. I would just say that from a tech perspective, whatever solution you settle on, you need to fully consider all of the business use cases, and some of them aren't super obvious.
Yep.
So that's where you start, and then you build out the requirements, and then figure out how to solve it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much, Eric. Damon, your closing advice, please.
Know why you're discounting. Because so many brands, I mean, your inbox is littered with brands that think that discounting is selling, and it's not.
Yeah, and I think we need to have another topic for that as well, because I don't think we could cover that. So I just didn't know that we could talk so much about discounting. So thank you so much for that. Okay, Chris, your closing advice, please.
Yeah, I didn't do enough plug for data analytics in this episode, so this is the time I'll do that. Use the data to help you drive the discounting, right? Particularly, again, in the world that I serve, data is your friend in this area. So let that help you here.
I completely agree. I think you both are touching on the similar points. Know why you are discounting, and that you can know only by looking at data. So thank you so much for that. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining. And if you're joining for the first time, we meet every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and we pick one topic related to e-commerce, and we bring one panel of expert each week. So don't miss next week's show. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.